Hello everyone, and welcome to the Supply System Guide for DEI, a mod for Total War Rome 2. In this guide, I'll go over the basics of the supply system and how it interacts with both regions and armies. The concept at the foundation of the supply system is that every region has its own supply level. Armies require these supplies and can go into attrition if the levels get too low. In order to see the supply level of a region, click on that region and then mouse over the food number in the left-hand panel, right over here where it says Food and Supplies. This panel has a breakdown of all the information you'll need to understand this region's supply situation. The food and supply systems are separate, but they do have some interaction. As you can see in this panel, the region's fertility rating is listed. This fertility rating determines how many supplies are produced at its base level. The supply status tells you how many supplies you have in that region. The supply cap lets you know how many total supplies you'll be able to have in that region at a base level. After the supply cap has been reached, you can then store supplies in the region as well. Regions have a base supply storage amount that can be then improved by various building types. Seasons also heavily impact supply levels, and under the season information, you'll see how many supplies are being produced each turn, which can also be improved by various buildings. When there are armies in the region, you will have supply consumption, which is estimated at the bottom of this screen, which, when combined with the supply production value, will give you the total supplies to be produced next turn at the bottom of this panel. Along with the supply production based on regional fertility, regional supply production can also be improved by buildings, and buildings will improve supply lines, which we'll cover later. When you look in the building browser, you'll see how different types of buildings have different supply effects. For example, storage buildings can act as strategic depots, which increase the storage space of a region and also allow for supply lines. Some ports can also do the same thing. Fishing ports and farms will add to the number of supplies produced in that region per turn. As you can see here, buildings like granaries can also act as a sort of mini strategic depot. It's important to plan your buildings in accordance with your campaign plans, keeping in mind the supply level and supply line situation. It's also important to note that foraging armies and low supply levels can actually damage these different building types. So, in summary, some buildings improve storage and create supply lines, while others add directly to the supply level of a region. The supplies of a region are used by armies in that region. In order to see the supply status of an army, click on that army and then mouse over the effect bundle in the bottom left corner. There are many different situations an army may find itself in. For example, home regions, allied regions, supply lines, foraging when they no longer have access to their supplies, supplies from fleets, and also attrition when they are out of supplies completely. As you can see, this army has gone from using its home region supplies to having a supply line because its adjacent region has a port that is a strategic depot, and the army has moved into foreign lands. Armies can also forage in foreign lands if they don't have supply lines or if they're a culture without supply lines, like most barbarian factions. Every supply situation for an army comes with various effects for that army. Also, various cultures have different supply systems. For example, Hellenic, Roman, and Eastern factions all have supply lines, while barbarian factions rely more on foraging. Nomadic factions live off the land in many ways, as do African and Arabian factions. You can see here that many different supply effects exist for various armies depending on the culture. Separately from armies, navies have their own system. Periodically, navies need to dock in order to resupply. When not docked, they have a limited time at sea, with a maximum of 8 turns that count down. Navies that have a supply ship unit are able to help supply armies both on land and at sea as transports. This Navy has a supply ship unit, so instead of using its normal supply lines, the Army is supplied by the local fleet. When an Army crosses the sea as transports, it will take attrition unless a Navy accompanies it with a supply ship unit. This Army will go from taking attrition on this turn to being supplied by the supply fleet on the next turn. Supply ships don't affect fleets, only armies. It's also important to note that solo admirals are not impacted by the supply system. Armies can also have baggage trains, but those only help on land by reducing supply consumption and helping with desert and alpine supply attrition. Armies that consume your supplies are part of the global logistics system. These include armies that are using supply lines. In order for a region to provide a supply line, it must meet several conditions. First, it must be your capital or have a strategic or operational depot, such as a storage building, a trading port, or a granary. It also must have neutral to good public order, not be under siege, have a positive regional supply value, as well as various other requirements that you can see here. Supply lines can be up to 3 regions away and do add the Army to the global logistics system. The global logistics system increases the upkeep and food costs of all your armies based on the total number of armies that you have. That's it for this guide. Thanks for watching. For more information, check out our TWC forums or Steam page. If you're interested in supporting the mod, check out our Patreon page.